Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by gifts from Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, Hush Blackwell, Barbara and Peter Gattermeyer, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly. And our topics this week: constant county chaos. Will a bizarre romance seal Governor Greitens' fate? And in presidential politics, is it still the economy, stupid? Plus roast and toast. But we start with our newsmaker segment and focus on the civil rights movement in Kansas City during this week when we celebrate the anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. Joining me is the newly elected president of the local NAACP branch, the Reverend Rodney E. Williams, pastor of the Swope Parkway United Christian Church. Reverend Williams, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming in and welcome to Ruckus.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Let me ask you a quick question about Dr. King before we talk about some of the Kansas City issues that you're dealing with. If Dr. King were suddenly transported here today somehow, would he see a lot of progress or be troubled by the lack of progress?
I think Dr. King would see a lot of progress, but I think he will also have trouble in his spirit because we certainly are not where I believe he would think we need to be.
What would be lacking that Dr. King would think needed to be here?
Well, Dr. King had this vision concerning the beloved community, and that beloved community has not become a reality as of yet. We still have segregation in Kansas City and throughout America, and so I think that would be troubling for Dr. King.
Your group and others are opposed to the privatizing of sidewalks in Westport weekend nights for 5 hours, I think it is, 2 nights a week, Friday night into Saturday morning and Saturday night into Sunday morning. The reason they want to close the streets there or privatize them is to allow merchants to screen people who are entering the district, see if they're carrying guns. The Westport merchants say they'll have people standing by trained to observe the process and make sure no one is discriminated against or treated unfairly. What's the objection to that?
The objection is that we believe that privatizing of public streets is a bad idea, and we see that there will present an opportunity for civil rights violations. And so whenever there is the potentiality that civil rights might be violated, that is a concern for the NAACP.
Well, if there are people who are trained monitoring the process,
yes,
and everybody who walks in is treated the same way, why is there likelihood of discrimination?
Well, I think the goal would be to have everyone treated the same way, but people come to work and they bring their biases to work in spite of the training that they have, and so we believe that those biases can kick in, and once those biases kick in, we believe that discrimination and civil rights violation might happen.
But the rationale for the privatizing of streets is to stop the gun violence that has been rampant in Westport.
Yes.
There is no civil right greater than the right to life, is there? And the danger that weapons would pose, or apparently does pose in Westport, is that not an issue?
Certainly, safety is an issue all over the city, not just Westport. We believe that we should have a comprehensive plan by the police department to put forth to make sure that all of Kansas City is safe and not just Westport.
Well, the city council has approved this plan. It's supposed to go into effect next spring.
Yes.
What can be done to stop it, if anything?
I'm not sure what can be done to stop it, but we need to make sure that we are voicing our opinion because we believe that this law is extreme, and extreme laws and extreme politics brings about tension in the communities, and we think that's going to happen.
Do you support the national organization's travel ban for African Americans to come to Missouri?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because individuals have to understand that coming to Missouri, just as the travel ban has stated, could be dangerous to your health. We advise people that if you are going to come, be aware that your civil rights might be discriminated.
Has this effort been successful? Has it stopped people from traveling to Missouri? And doesn't that ban hurt businesses in Missouri and hurt some of the people you're trying to serve?
I think the ban has been successful. I think it will hurt the economy. But sometimes we have to hurt the economy. Sometimes we have to do whatever needs to be done to make sure justice is coming across. And so what we're doing, we're not banning people or telling them you can't come.
No, you can't do that.
Right.
You don't have the authority to do that.
But what we are doing is saying, if you do come, understand that your civil rights might just be violated.
Do you think African Americans who live in Missouri should follow this ban and not travel within the state?
Well, if you live in the state, you have to travel, but I think you have to be very cautious.
Like if you have relatives in St. Louis and you live in Kansas City, should you not be traveling from one city to the other?
I think you should travel from one city to the other, but I think you need to be very careful in your travels.
All right, down to about 30, 40 seconds. So quickly, if you can, a couple of the top goals you have for your term as president in the next 2 or 3 years?
One of the things that I'm hoping to do is to help in some way to foster an attitude where Missouri, the state, where Kansas City will become more of a moral city where everybody's rights will be protected and respected.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for coming in. It's a pleasure to meet you, and good luck in your work as president of the NAACP.
Thank you for having me.
That's Kansas City NAACP President, Reverend Rodney E. Williams. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Attorney Laura McConwell is a former 3-term mayor of Mission, Kansas. Jason Grill is a senior advisor at Paris Communications and is founder of J. Grill Media. Jamika Kendricks is an education activist and enthusiast. And Patrick Tuohy is director of municipal policy at the Show Me Institute, a free market think tank. Thanks for all of you coming in today. Appreciate it. If you're interested in Patrick's writing, you can read a column of his in yesterday, that is Wednesday's Kansas City Star. Well, you've all heard the Governor Greitens story by now. In fact, you have probably heard it more times than you want. An illicit romance, a nude photo, and the allegation of blackmail. Doesn't sound really good for a young Republican governor in his first term with apparent aspirations of reaching the White House someday. He says he won't resign as Missouri governor, but does he have a future in politics? Probably no one knows for sure, but those who have served as elected officials probably have a pretty good feel for it. We have 2 former elected officials, Jason and Laura. Let's ask them first. Is Greitens' career over? Jason?
I go back and forth on this, Mike, to be quite honest. When I first heard the news last week, I thought, oh, he's done. But then I started thinking more about it, and more facts will come out probably, obviously, like they do. They always drip out. But I feel like this all comes down to his support from his GOP membership and also his donors.
He hasn't had total support yet, has he, from the GOP?
He has not. I know he's making a lot of phone calls and doing a lot of due diligence to all the people that supported him to see if they're still on board and to apologize for what he will apologize for. So I don't know. Does he last to the end of his term? Does he last till the end of the session? Does he quit now? I mean, I think that's all in the air. I think his future, though, outside of Missouri is probably done. And
you served at one time as a state representative in Missouri.
Yes. I'm a recovering politician.
And Laura, as I mentioned at the beginning, you're a former 3-term mayor of Mission, Kansas. Do you think this is the end of the road for Greitens?
Well, I think it's a difficult road forward for Governor Greitens. If we were just talking about an affair, that's a private matter. That's really between the governor and his wife. But when we're looking at the timing, at the time that he was having this affair, he was also soliciting donations and for his campaign from donors. So, I mean, he's going to have a whole lot of people to eat crow to. I think one of the things we also miss when we're talking about Governor Greitens is that this story came out from basically a disgruntled ex-husband who had an axe to grind with a woman who potentially is, I mean, maybe she's a victim in this, maybe she's not. I don't know. I don't know we weren't there. I don't know what the truth is, but, I've got a lot of problems with the story all the way around, and I think it's like a made-for-TV movie.
Yeah, the lady, Jamika, is not involved, at least publicly. She says she wants to stay out of it. She wants no part of it. It was her ex-husband who leaked the story. We don't know how much of it's true. We do know there was an affair. Greitens has admitted that. Do you think that's the end of the road for Greitens?
I think it is really sad that we are having this conversation. And I say it's really sad that we're having this conversation because we are asking, is it the end of his political career because he had an affair on his wife that affected him, his wife, and the woman who he had an affair with, and her husband or whoever the man is? But when we're talking about ending a political career, that's a personal matter. But professionally, when it comes to education, this man has done the exact same thing. The lying, the manipulating, deceit, when it comes to education, because how many times did he put in new people for the State Board of Education, make nominations? How many times did he do that? And that affects thousands of families. So for us to have this conversation because he had an indiscretion with his wife, which they say they handled privately, I think speaks a lot about us and our political system when we weren't having that conversation, when he was making aware the State Board of Education can't even do their job to educate kids in Missouri. And so I just think it's sad that the conversation about his political career comes about because he had an affair and not because he's doing things that impact people.
In fact, has anything changed in Missouri education? Simply the governor is trying to appoint people, which is his prerogative, to appoint people to the board.
It has not yet.
It has not yet, so
forward
we can't talk about something that has yet to happen.
But he is moving forward a personal agenda, and in order to get
that's
that
his
to happen,
prerogative
you've got to
as
set
governor.
stuff up.
He has the right to appoint people.
And it's his prerogative in his marriage to do
have
what he
an affair?
wants and then to have a conversation with his
We
wife.
don't really know.
That's something they had to determine.
We don't really know.
They worked that out.
We don't really know what he did except have an affair. We don't know if he tried to blackmail the lady.
But his wife said they've talked about it, and
Yeah.
and she's fine with it, and it happened years ago, and they wanted to move past. That's his private life. As a public, as a politician, did he kind of put that out on the table? Absolutely, he did.
But Patrick,
why are we looking at that
Patrick,
instead of what he's
as
doing
a politician, do you really have a private life?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think a lot of people who might consider a life in public service are asking themselves that question right now. Do I want to go through this? Do I want to risk having jilted lovers from decades ago come out and have to deal with that again? I think it's a fair question.
There might be a political motive in all of this too. I mean, I think that's already been discussed a lot.
Absolutely, and that's what makes this so messy. We don't have any particular knowledge of this situation. It's being investigated. I think I understand this is kind of a pundit political talk show, but it's probably best to just keep mum until we know more.
All right, let's move ahead. When I interviewed Jackson County Prosecutor Jean Peters Baker last week, my first question was, is the county government dysfunctional? Here is her answer.
There's a fair amount of chaos at this moment. So I think what I would say is I pray that our county exec went home last night, got a good night's sleep, and is ready to come back to the office today, willing to talk to other branches of government.
I don't think he's had a good night's sleep since, because if it were chaotic last week, it is even more so now. The conflict between the legislature and the county executive, Frank White, over turf and financial issues continues, and the legislators are taking the executive to court. At issue is who controls the so-called Combat Drug and Crime Prevention Program, funded by a special tax. White wants his own appointee in charge. The legislature wants the program run by Prosecutor Jean Peters Baker. Until that's resolved, lawmakers are setting aside their request for the state attorney general to look at questions about White's personal finances and tax payments. So what effect does this kind of chaos have on citizens who think they're being served, or at least supposed to be served, by the county government, Patrick?
Well, the idea that there is chaos among legislative bodies isn't anything new. It's been that way since our founding. I think where the rubber hits the road is our services, basic services to citizens being disrupted because of personality fights. You can make an argument that the combat tax never really accomplished much that it was supposed to in the first place.
What is it exactly supposed to do? Do you know?
So it funds a bunch of programs like DARE and things like that, but I don't know that
there's a special tax set aside for it, right?
That's right. No, it's a special tax that collects. It's meant to go to DARE programs, to go to Aim for Peace. I think it is arguable that the taxpayers are being served by these funds in
Drug
the first
prevention
place.
and crime prevention,
That's
is that
right.
fair to
Yeah.
say? Yeah. Okay.
And so it really, this is a drama. It's kind of apart from services people are being delivered. But if it starts to get in the way of government performing its basic functions, then I think it becomes a problem.
You've spent a long time in Missouri, Jason.
Right.
Are you surprised by this, by what's going on
I am a little
in county
bit because
government?
I've got to know a lot of the people on the legislative board and also county executive throughout the years.
And if I may, the legislators are all fairly well experienced, are they
That's
not?
right,
In
yeah.
comparison, in contrast to the county
A
executive.
lot of them have been there for quite a while,
Okay.
and so it's kind of frustrating, you know. And you have a new person come in, obviously with no political experience, but in my contacts with him has always been very polite, nice, friendly, good person, and so it's frustrating when these two people and these two bodies cannot work together and get along to find solutions. And I think that Patrick's point is that's what people care about.
Well, Jamika, this does have effect on people, does it not?
Of course it does. I think everything that our elected officials are called to do has an effect on us. And with this one, when I was reading about it, I was kind of disappointed because thinking from it, I'm looking at it like, okay, these are like kids. Like there are two kids who are fighting over a toy and they're like, it's mine, no, it's mine. And I think at some point they've got to act like adults. At some point somebody has to say, okay, let's have the conversation. If the issue is the spending that's under $10,000 that the county does not have to approve or the legislature does not have to approve, well then what can we do within our power legally to make it where we can provide better oversight if that's an issue? If we don't know if the programs are actually performing as intended and we want to make sure we're doing a better job with tax dollars, let's figure out how to make that happen. Let's figure out how to have those conversations rather than, well, I don't want this person running or that person needs to run it. How is Gene Peters Baker going to be better?
But according to the prosecutor, there's a bigger problem, and that is she suggests White doesn't respect the separation of powers doctrine, that he doesn't necessarily feel that the legislature needs to approve certain of his actions or that his actions can override what the legislature wants done, and that just can't exist in reasonable government.
And that's right. I mean, there are rules and there's process that you need to follow, and if the executive doesn't fully appreciate those, someone that's one of his supporters should pull him aside and discuss it with him. But I do agree that it just seems like it's a bunch of kindergartners fighting right now, and you know the public really likes Frank White. He has built up a huge rapport in the Kansas City metropolitan area, and so a lot of the constituents are going to feel like he's just getting picked on. And so I think it's incumbent on everybody to sort of act like adults and figure it out. And if the executive is stepping over the line, rather than trying to say gotcha and embarrass him, somebody should talk to him.
Yes.
But I think also these long-term legislators need to.
What about the professional
own it,
staff,
too?
too? I mean, all these cities have professional staff that do a great job. We see it in Kansas City. Sometimes the politicians actually get in the way of government.
yes.
And let's let the people that have been there actually, that know how to build cities, and know how to do these things.
Sorry,
Well, and that's
I
the new
absolutely
article.
disagree with that. The problem, we've got turmoil at the national level,
politicians.
the turmoil at the national level, the state level, and the local level because of personalities, because of people acting immaturely. The solution is stop giving these people power over your lives, stop giving them money, and the impact of them being silly is reduced. But the idea that we want a big, huge government, and then, of course, we're shocked and amazed when these people act in their own personal self-interests, surprises us is ridiculous. We ought to starve the beast.
Money,
Absolutely.
what are you meaning? So are you meaning donating to political campaigns or giving tax dollars? What do you
Both,
mean?
but certainly tax dollars. I think in Kansas City we are a high tax city. The county collects an awful lot of money. They can't agree on how to spend it. You know what? Until they can agree, we ought to give it back to the people.
And they still haven't decided what to do about a troubled jail situation in Jackson County.
That's another thing. I'm sorry, the staff can make or break what's going on, and the staff absolutely has to have a hand on what this dispute that's going
And
on.
I have to have a hand on the timing, and our time for this segment has concluded. Moving forward. When Bill Clinton ran for president, his campaign's mantra was, "It's the economy, stupid," meaning that voters cared first and foremost about pocketbook issues, and most political analysts would agree. With a good economy, the president is given credit and maintains popularity. Except for right now. The economy is soaring, stocks at an all-time high, wages are going up, taxes being cut, businesses handing out bonuses to employees, enough to make you think, President Trump would be getting high approval ratings from voters. But of course he is not. His approval numbers are generally in the high 30s to low 40s. So is it no longer the economy stupid? Jamika? Now don't take that like I'm saying you're not stupid. I'm just saying that mantra was it's the economy stupid.
That's okay.
All right.
Well, I think it still is the economy, but I think we look at it a little differently. And so, whereas before everyone's looking at the market's doing well, then we're assuming everyone's doing really great. Or we're looking at unemployment. But I think now people are starting to think about it a little differently. So we said they're giving bonuses. Walmart is giving bonuses, but you have to have worked there for 20 years to get it. And then in addition to that, they're closing 63 stores. So yeah, you're giving a pay raise, but how many people are losing their jobs? And so I think, and then we're also looking at when you say unemployment's going down, we're also saying, okay, if it's going down, then are we getting jobs that pay a living wage? Are people going to be able to live off of this? Are they going to have good benefits? And a lot of times that's not the case. Or is it a job that lasts longer than a year or 6 months? A lot of times it's not the case. And so I think people are starting to look at that. And also, for me, as a voter, when I hear the market, I'm thinking that's CEOs and that's upper level management. Those people really benefit from that. But I'm wondering how I benefit.
But you know, that's not really true anymore with IRAs and 401ks.
But that's IRAs and 401ks for people who have middle class jobs. But most of our people
it's for anybody who works for a lot of companies who choose to have them.
They don't.
The reason people are excited about these Trump cuts and consumer confidence is higher and the stock market as a symbol of that is doing very well is because government is getting out of the way. Yeah. It's again, we need to do this at the national, state, and local level. We're tired of these people who are spending our money. They have their own self-interest. What Trump is doing is saying, we're going to cut taxes. We're going to give it back to you. People are excited about that. They're excited about having more. I think they are absolutely excited about it. It wasn't as good as we would
have liked, though, right? The tax cut. And so they changed things around.
Things are good, but they could always be better. Is that the?
I think they're excited about the economy. I just think it's the tweeting that gets in the way.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think
personality.
I think if if Bill Clinton had been out there tweeting and making comments the whole time, I think he would have gotten some pushback too.
I think that has something to do with it, but I also think people are looking a little deeper than we used to.
What about a press corps that spends so much time demonizing this man, no matter what he says or does? A 50-some-minute news conference asking details about his health after a presidential doctor comes out and says the guy's in great health, his mind is fine, his body's fine, he's overweight. And then they say, does he have false teeth?
CNN's running stories about how many Diet Cokes the president drinks.
Yeah.
I mean, that is supposed to be...
This is not the first time it's happened. Yeah. It's not.
It's the first time anything
But it is the first time that we've had a president who puts out the kind of tweets that he does and then says, why is the media talking about it?
It's maybe the first time Twitter's available to a president.
Right, but he can't say it's the media when he's feeding it. Well, so if you feel like it's the media, quit putting out dumb stuff on Twitter.
But his answer is that's his way to go above and beyond the media because he says, I'm not getting a fair shake from the media. This way I can get this little device
and then you get beat up.
So stop it. But there are a lot of people that want to hear what he's thinking and they appreciate that he's tweeting because there are a whole lot of other, presidents who may have had very much the same thoughts, but they didn't put them out there in the public.
Okay.
And that's the thing with Donald.
I have to wrap it up. You know that Trump was the founder of what was called the birther movement about Obama's birth certificate. Now there are people battling over his weight, and they're calling it the girther movement.
Nice.
I love that.
Now we head to the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes have 30 seconds each to engage or outrage people and events in the news, and we start this week with Patrick.
A toast to David Alvey, the new mayor of the unified government of Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas, because he said in a recent television interview that sometimes local government focuses so much on big development that they forget about neighborhoods. What a great thing to hear, and an important lesson for leaders in Kansas City, Missouri. What good are shiny new buildings if the people don't feel safe in their neighborhoods?
Laura.
Well, I'm going to toast my former colleagues and the mayors in Johnson County, who is a great group, and also in particular Mayor Gerlach, whose city just has become, the number 11 on the top 100 places to live, because they are fighting that good fight and working for the neighborhoods and working for their businesses and the people that live and work in those communities to make them a great place to live, work, and play.
All right, Jamika, you got a little extra time if you want it.
Yay. I want to roast Governor Greitens, obviously, and those who supported him in the political maneuvers that he made to undermine the State Board of Education and to remove the Commissioner of Education, who was respected and admired by most of the people whom she served. And I want to remind him that he once said, "You can hire people to praise you, slip cash to people who will tell you it's okay, everybody does it. But deep down, you know the truth about yourself, and you see it staring back at you in the rotted, bloated, self-serving soul in the mirror."
All right, and Jason, you got a little extra time.
Okay, well, I got a couple then. Breaking the rules there.
Don't overdo it.
I'm going to toast the newest edition of the Kansas City Star editorial board, Toriano Porter. I actually had a chance when I host a little radio show every week at Intercom, KMBZ 98.1 and 980 AM. He was the producer on the midday show, got to know him. Now he's on the KC Star editorial board, which is pretty cool. And also want to toast Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas, and both states for putting forth the best effort they could on the Amazon proposal. You know, it's frustrating that we're not in the top 20, but at least both states work together, but all cities work together. There was a regional type thing happening here in Kansas City, which I think we need more of, is more regional work together.
All right, and finally, I have nothing against bears, except perhaps for those on Wall Street. But do we need Care Bears in dorm rooms for honor students at the University of Massachusetts? The Care Bears on the wall are supposed to help honor students who feel grumpy or stressed to cheer up, study, and eat properly. Happily, not all students are buying into the idea. In fact, many are calling it unbearable. And that's Ruckus for this week. We're back next Thursday at 7. Now for the Ruckettes and the crew, Mike Shannon saying thanks very much for watching and good night.